All right, so we have arrived now at the last text of the semester, Top Girls by Carol Churchill. And the first thing I wanted to do is to let you know that of the availability of a video of the entire play. And I have it linked in the Course Connect page here, but I wanted to make sure you know that I think it's a TV production originally from England, and there's a long introduction, and so the play itself does not begin to minute 20. So if you want to watch it, and I would encourage you to watch it because this is another crazy text. And some of the things, when you look at it on the page, you just like, what in the hell are they trying to do here? But it is a good adaptation, and they're pretty true to the play. Although, as we'll find out, this play has lots of quirks to it. Also, on the Course Connect page is a link to a PDF of the play. And I didn't know it was there before, and I don't know, some of you may have discovered it, but I was very excited when I discovered it this morning because it's a very nice and clear PDF that I can use for this video. So I can copy and paste some passages in like I often do. But I thought I was going to have to scan or take pictures of passages with my phone. So anyway, I'm glad about that. There are a couple of different versions of this play, and there is a note actually inside this one from the author about how she has seen it performed or how she's allowed it to be performed in different ways. But I'm not sure which version the bookstore was stocking or which versions you all have, but this is one of two that I have, and so I'll be using it since, like I said, the PDF is really good, and I'm not sure if I like this version as well as the other one that I have, but I will be using it for this video. The different versions or editions of this play is the first of many challenges in reading the play. They show that the play has been performed in different sequences. This version is in 3 acts, whereas the other one is only in 2. The other version takes this scene and breaks it up into 2 different scenes and has one of them come before the scene in Joyce's backyard. So it's a strange thing in that way, too. The play is also challenging in that it is presented in 3 seemingly unrelated scenes with different characters. And it's also non-chronological. I mean, this is not something that we haven't seen before. We had that in Arcadia, but the last scene is at Joyce's house again, but a year earlier. Okay, so, and I think it will make sense once we get to the end, but it is another one of those challenges. Another challenge is dealing with this impossible opening scene with this mix of top girls, some of whom are historical figures like Isabella Bird and Lady Nijo, some who are purely fictional like Dulgret and Patient Griselda, and then one, Pope Joan, who is my personal favorite, I think, who is whose existence seems to be more questionable or legendary. Nobody seems to know for sure if she actually, is thought to have been Pope between 854 and 856. So not a time of great literacy, but a really interesting character, and there's also a movie that was made about her too. Yet another challenge is with the actual reading of the play. If you haven't read this introductory note, you might have been confused by the lines being broken up with slashes and asterisks. if we were in the classroom, um, what I usually do is ask for volunteers to read a few lines like these to see how it sounds and how difficult it is. I'm trying to imagine what the actors are going through when they have to step over other people's lines. You might watch some of the video to get the idea. So, what are some of the things that there's another one that's on a previous page that I couldn't get in this shot. But sometimes a character sometimes continues speaking right through another's speech. So when Isabella says, "When I was 40, I thought my life was over," and then Nijo just steps right in and starts talking herself, um, and um, and Isabella just keeps on speaking as if she didn't even hear what Nijo is saying. And then sometimes a speech follows on from a speech earlier than one immediately before it. And continuity is marked with an asterisk. Okay, so here we have the speech by Griselda, and there's an asterisk, and then other people are talking about something not related, and it's only a few lines later where the asterisk comes back to let you know that this was a response to this speech. I mean, it's crazy stuff. So we might ask the question of what the hell the author is thinking with all of this interrupting and talking over other people. And as we go on, you'll find that this author hasn't really any interest in engaging us in the characters, let alone entertaining us. I mean, there's a very specific intention, but you think it kind of runs counter to what we intuitively think about a dramatic production, engage the audience and provide an interesting experience. And she has something else very different in mind. You might also notice that not all the characters engage in this kind of interrupting and talking over other people. Some don't talk much at all, like Dull Gret. And Griselda, patient Griselda, is someone who's very um, polite, I guess is the word I'm looking for. She doesn't speak unless spoken to. But Isabella, I think, and Nijo are probably the two characters that do it the most. And it kind of reflects something about their characters, the sense of liking to hear themselves talk, sort of a pronounced self-concept, liking to get words in edgewise. But yeah, a variety. So it does say something about their character. And I'm actually not going to talk too much about this opening scene, at least not in this first video. I'm going to come back to it towards the end. I mean, it is a story of, basically about Marlene, who has joined a club of sorts of these top girls who have achieved something in particular in their life, and women who have in some way made it. And they all seem to be, proud of themselves or happy with the fact that they've made it. But and as each one is kind of telling their story, they do reveal that becoming a top girl comes at some kind of expense. So I think that we want to be asking ourselves the question about them and other successful women in the play about like at what expense did they become top girls? I mean, if you pay attention to what they have given up, that's kind of what I'm getting at. And I think it's also important to know that they have made it as a top girl in a man's world, okay? And that has a lot to do with some of the issues that Carol Churchill is trying to deal with here. She identifies herself as a socialist feminist. And this is the main reason why I included this as the main text in this unit, is that it addresses both gender and class in the same play. And we'll see how class comes in, especially near the end. The next scene that I want to talk about is with Marlene in the Top Girls Employment Agency office. And this might be confusing depending on what version of the text you are reading. As in one version this scene comes immediately after the restaurant scene, and in another, the scene with Angie, Kit, and Joyce comes first. But I think this sequence helps us see more quickly how Marlene has gotten to be a top girl, and it keeps that idea of the top girls club in focus. In this interview with Janine, we might start by asking what it is that Marlene is saying to her about how to become a top girl. You know, don't mention your engagement ring or your marriage. Give up travel. Work hard for 10 years. Things like, so you won't tell them they're married. I think, reading between the lines, I think we see in Janine, she's 20 years old. She says she's saving to get married. She's trying to earn more money and probably, looking to move up the ladder. At some point she mentions, the secretary that's ahead of her has been there for years and doesn't seem to be going anywhere. So she doesn't see any room to grow. So she's looking to move up, get more money, wants to plan life with marriage and kids. And Marlene is telling her to squelch that. She mentions, travel. Marlene takes that to mean, you want to travel for your work. And I think what Janine is simply saying, I'd like to be able to get out of town once in a while. I think there's a particularly poignant line when Marlene, with a typical kind of business plan mindset, asked her, "Is that where you want to be in 10 years?" And Janine's response is, "I don't know if I'll be alive in 10 years." I think Churchill's intention here is to show that what women are being told that they have to do if they want both a career and a family is maybe lie, also give up things that they would like to have, like travel, and that success comes only after years of sacrifice. And I guess the other side of this interview is that the more that we learn about Marlene, is that we learn gradually about what she has had to give up to get ahead. And so this, again, what the author's intention is to show that for women and careers, this is not a new topic. It's one that is still relevant today. But I think at the time that Churchill was writing this, it was probably a bit newer and more of something that needed to be talked about. Over the course of the play, there are 3 interviews. Each of the top girls' agencies, agents I guess they are, has an interview with a prospective hire. And if you look at those, what are some of the things that they seem to have in common? The women who are interviewing are confident. They talk pretty fast. But there seems to be, in each of them, a certain level of deception on both sides. In each case, the women who are being interviewed, and I think you guys probably understand this about interviews, is that, how much do you give away? How honest do you be? What do they want to hear? And so the women who are being interviewed are defensive, and they, in some cases, they wind up lying pretty boldly. But on the other side, the interviewer is encouraging a kind of that the women looking for work should not be giving much away either to the employers, and that they should be ready to sacrifice, ready to do whatever it takes to get that job. And I think that the other thing that's significant here is that, I mean, Marlene has become, a manager, and so she is not necessarily in a subservient role, but in all of these interviews, these jobs that these women are, well, the work that the women are looking for are jobs that are in subservient roles to men. And so that's another part of the conversation. And this part, I'm just, it's just occurring to me now that I didn't have it in my notes at this point. But the plot line with Howard, the guy who was the man working in the agency, who did not get the promotion that Marlene got. His wife comes in to argue for his job, and her husband has had a heart attack. He's so stressed out about not getting a promotion and letting a woman get the promotion ahead of him. So this is another thing that's really at the heart of this play. Okay, now let's move on to the scene with Angie and Kit, and also Joyce. We are now presented with a third seemingly unconnected scene. So on the first look at this play, an audience without any preparation would really be thinking, what the hell is going on here? And who are these characters now? And it's not a pleasant scene either. I was talking before about Churchill is not really that interested in entertaining us or making us have a feel-good reaction to anything. But this is, the language and the gestures here are very crude. Angie and Kit and Joyce, they're living in a lower class kind of poverty, a life of poverty and ignorance. And you look at Joyce's parenting skills, and you think this person is really clueless about how to raise a child. And it is significant to note, and they draw attention to this, of the age difference between Angie and Kit. And it is pretty clear that Angie is a bit slow. And the question of why she's hanging out with Kit, who is much younger but also seems to be much smarter, you wonder what they're doing together. So there's a lot of negativity in this scene. Well, in many places in the play, not just this scene, but in this play, there's a lot of negativity. There's the characters talking about hating, talking about killing, and there's the business with blood between Kit and Angie as well. And this is something that shows up in the later scene between Joyce and Marlene. There is this extreme hostility, but at the same time, there are moments when there's maybe not so much a presence of a connection, but maybe a recollection of a time when there was something more positive. And I think it's really a significant, another poignant line, when after all the talking about hating and killing and blood, when Joyce and Kit are alone, when Angie is in the house putting on her red dress, Kit says to Joyce, "I love Angie." And this was after all of the talk about hating and the violent language and everything. So there's something, just beneath the surface where these are characters that do have some kind of connection, I think. Angie does pick up on one thing, though, and I don't know if you have read far enough to make this connection, but she's absolutely right about this. Angie is Marlene's daughter. Marlene gave her up to her sister Joyce so that she could pursue her career. And this is something that was never communicated to Angie. We'll find out more about the details in the last scene, which takes place a year earlier than this current scene. But this brings us back to the question of what Marlene has had to give up in order to become a top girl. From this point on in the play, Angie takes a more central role in the plot. And she is someone who lacks skills, lacks education, but she wants something out of life too. And a question that comes up within the context of the play is whether Angie is going to, quote, make it. And this is not even in terms of being a top girl, but in making it in life, having any kind of a life. Or she's going to be reduced to what, well, in a way, Joyce is reduced to. But keep this question in mind as we head towards the end of this play.